Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can find me on Instagram as Skeindeer, and I am Skeindeer Knits as a designer on Ravelry. And there's also the Ravelry group Skeindeer Knits, which is the best place to part in knit-alongs and just get in touch and get pattern help and all that stuff. So hi to new viewers. This is my knitting podcast, knitting talk show, where I sit and talk about knitting for about an hour, ideally every other week, but we never really know when I have time, but I have time now. So to returning viewers, hi and welcome back. I have only a couple of things to go through today because I am about to pop outside to see some friends in this lovely Easter weather. I also do predict, based on some of the things I'll be covering in this episode, that this might come out a little bit later than Easter. For that I apologise, but it will prolong your Easter vibe, especially with this whole yellow top. I mean, this is just, it's Easter here. So that's that. What we're going to be talking about today is a new pattern, some finished knits, and most of all, new yarn that I have acquired that I am very excited to talk to you about. And it's the main reason I'm making this episode, because I wanted to get my mitts on this yarn for a very long time and I finally do, and there were great plans, great plans. I will also be talking to you about my trip to Norway that I just got back from, and just, yeah, let's just get started. And before we get into that, I do want to give a massive shout out to my ongoing knit-alongs, which is both the year-long Skeindeer knit-along, Skeindeer Garment Cal 2022, I believe it's called, where you can take part by making any of my garment patterns. They just have to be started and finished in 2022, and you can make as many as you want, and that's as many entries as you have, and I'll have a prize draw at the end of the year. Probably at the beginning of 2023 actually. The other knit along is the festive yoke cal that we started just before last Christmas and will be ending at the end of the upcoming Christmas. So we're kind of in the lull period for those who want more time, or for those who don't mind knitting Christmas knits the whole year, but we'll be sort of picking up on that one when we get closer to that. So what is this new pattern? The item itself is done. I did show in the last episode, so let me show you one more time. It is indeed the Librarian Cardigan, which is so dark you can't actually see anything. Let's rely on the exposure settings to do the job. There we are. I'm actually gonna just scoot aside so you can see the photos that I took while I was in Norway. I finally got around to do it. Was supposed to be doing it in Lofoten, but oh well. So the Librarian Cardigan does have a lot of commonalities with the Librarian pullover, but also does have some differences. The main one is the introduction of a steek, so that you can cut it open and it will be a cardigan. So that's, you know, changing the instructions quite a bit, especially when you get sort of further up. And it also does have a V-neck, so that's a difference. I did have one test knitter who actually wanted the round neck of the pullover and managed to use that from that pattern that she'd already purchased and put that on the cardigan that she was test knitting. So that should be possible. I haven't tried that, but I don't see why not. They're otherwise sort of similar enough that math-wise should work out. So yeah, it is made in the gorgeous Vidde by Hillesvåg yarn, and I will say this charcoal for some reason is a lot softer than the blue yarn I use for the Librarian pullover, but they are the same yarn. I just sometimes find that the dye does make a difference in how it feels. I think they're both very soft. They're a mix of lamb's wool and pelt wool, but this charcoal, I'm just, oh, it's a hug to my skin. It's just, yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to be modelling it right now because it's quite toasty in London and I don't want to break out into a sweat before I go out on a walk, where I'm going to be doing it eventually anyway. But there we are, Librarian Cardigan. I am very pleased with it. I might actually bring it with me today, because you always need to layer up when you're on a walk. You go around and you get hot, and then you sit in the shade and you get cold, and just, I might just bring you along with me today. I have been wearing it a lot actually. As soon as I was done with the photo shoot in Norway, I was wearing this and a new shawl pattern of mine that we will get to later. It was perfect layering piece in the Easter sun. I just sat in the sun with this on me and it was great. I'll put the discount code here for those of you who are early birds. That just means that those of you who get the pattern early get a discount, because that way I can give back to you a little bit of what you give to me by being early and, you know, getting my pattern out there and sort of having that initial excitement when a pattern is new. Although I will always argue that patterns are always, you know, relevant and interesting, and there's no such thing as like, oh, that knitting pattern is 2 years old and it's no longer something I want to knit. Like, no, this is slow fashion, that's what we're doing here. So I would always give a big vote for older patterns. I don't even consider a pattern old unless it's like older than me. So there. But yeah, I'm very pleased with this cardigan. I do think that probably wraps up my whole librarian experience. It's the 4th librarian pattern. I mean, I'm still looking into the children's garment department a little bit more, but for adults at least, having the pullover, the vest and the cardigan, I think that about wraps it up. Sorry for those of you who wanted a onesie for adults. I'm not doing that. I'm still thinking about for kids. I was visiting, I'm going to get to that at the end of the episode, but I was visiting my nephew last week. I miss him so much. It's just been a couple of days at the time of recording, but he is wearing his librarian onesie all the time and he's so cute in it. And so yeah, it's very nice to see that it's been worn and loved and oh, it's supposed to be. So there. We're now just one big happy librarian family. I also handed over the Glenmore pullover. That is a Isolde teak pattern. So I'd already done the Glenmore pullover for my sister, and this time I also had made one for my nephew because Isolde came out with a children's version of it, and so now they are matchy. What's wrong with that? I even managed to match up the yarn because I used Aran weight, dare I say almost chunky, Laxton's BFL Massam for my sister's version, and I didn't have any more left of that for my nephews, and it's kind of hard to get a hold of unless you want to buy it wholesale to be a yarn dyer, which I am not. So I managed to hold double the fingering weight Laxton's BFL Massam yarn with the DK weight that I used for a jumper that I made for my mum, so that actually made it about the same weight, and so they're all matchy now. I didn't get a photo of the two of them together, sadly, so I'm just kind of creating an image in your mind of that. It's cute. Well, that was a quick introduction of a new pattern. I wish I had a lot more to say about it, but my mind is still in Norway. Another thing I got photographed in Norway, this is obviously not a new pattern because I couldn't do that because the Marius pattern is like super protected. Don't get me started on that. I mean, I can give you maybe a brief summary, I don't know. The Marius is a jumper that came out in Norway in the early to mid 50s. There was sort of like 2 releases from 2 different companies by 2 different designers. It's like a whole hoo-ha. I really don't want to get into it unless we're getting into it, which we might be one day. I have planned something, in fact. But the whole thing that kind of led to a whole legal dispute that made this the only knitting pattern that I know of that has sort of a protected, this is not becoming a pattern because I do not want to get into trouble, even though this is heavily based on the Satistar design, which is public domain, so make it make sense. I wanted to make myself my own Marius, so I based this off of the Eyelander pattern version A. So there's like 2 setup versions in the pattern. A is the easiest. You could also use Haldoguide. That would probably be easier because then you don't have to do the weird stuff that I did with a neckline, which is where I literally just cut it up later on. So I'd actually knitted across the whole thing and then just cut out the shape of the neckline that I wanted later. That's easy if you don't like to plan things and just do it as you go. And I mostly just made this for my own challenge to make a garment without making a single note, which I almost succeeded at, but I had to write some notes for the sleeves just to make sure I could match it on the other sleeve, which I kind of didn't anyway. But yeah, I literally just cast on the bust circumference that I wanted. That was the only number I needed. Didn't need any numbers to cut up the neckline. I just did that as I pleased. Same picking up for the upper arm, so just made sure it was plenty because I wanted a lot of ease. Once I had decreased like every 6th round, 7th round, something like that, I just rapidly decreased a lot so that I sort of had that sort of stitch count that I know is good for my cuff. And yeah, a known number kind of design, if you will, though it's not a design, just for me, just for my own knitting pleasure. I need to really stop saying knitting. Once you start, it's kind of difficult to stop. Fun fact, did you know that a lot of words that have the KN beginning actually have Norwegian origin, and we do pronounce the K, so like knee, kne. I don't know what knitting originates in, but would imagine it maybe has something to do with knyting, which is knotting maybe, but that's another word, right? Knyte, knot. Where did the K go, England? Where did it go? Yeah, that's the Marius. Maybe this is the one I'll be wearing today. I might just. I like that it's so big on me because then it's quite the layering piece. I can wear stuff underneath. I think we forget about that sometimes when we pick knitting garments for us to knit. We kind of just measure ourselves and we don't want to add too much ease because then it takes longer to knit. I certainly did that so much in my beginning garment knitting days, and I kind of regret that now, because had I picked them up from the store shelf, I would have known that, oh, I want this to be that much bigger than the garments I'll be wearing under my clothes. I want this cardigan, say, to be an outer piece. I have to measure with one or several jumpers underneath, you know. I want it to be so and so loose on me. And sometimes when you're starting out making knitting garments, we forget about that part and we just think we need to knit it to our own measurements, which, you know. And another question I get every now and then is about whether the measurements in the pattern is a measurement of the body or a measurement of the garment. And I can tell you pretty much, unless otherwise stated, it should be the measurement of the garment. A pattern has no business telling you what your measurements are. It should be telling you the measurement of the garment. So that's I think you can pretty much assume, unless it specifically says this is your measurement, the body measurement, you know. Like it will say maybe for bust ... and then say the bust circumference of the garment later. So something like that it could be doing, but generally a schematic should be of the garment, not the body. How did I get onto that topic? I'm just like adding meat to the bones of this episode, because there's not a whole lot of I mean, I'm literally just talking about the same garments I was talking about last time, but isn't it lovely? Having had a little bit of a knitting slump again, not one that's worth mentioning, but just like slightly compared to my usual knitting speed, it's really, really delightful to have two finished garments that also serve kind of two separate kind of wardrobe roles, because this one is a little bit more sort of fitted and snug, though it doesn't have to be. I would argue you could just make a bigger size if you want, again, like I said, a layering piece. I kind of want another one that I could do that with too, but it's nice that I can have this in a more sort of fitted style, whereas this is the more of a baggy kind of casual. It's nice to have both for both sort of purposes. The yarn, so this is both Hillesvåg. This is Hillesvåg Vidd, as I said. This is Hillesvåg Ask, through and through. I could be using something like, you know, Finull, PT2, Tova, etc. But I wanted Ask. I got my mitts on some navy blue Ask back when it was being sold out from various shops that were closing down at the time. It was like 2017, I think, 2016 maybe. So I hoarded that, and yeah. Oh, the only thing that's actually different from last time I showed you these garments is just the addition of buttons and just tacking down the steek where I felt like it. I did that on the cardigan. I didn't bother with this cardigan. They're both cardigans. I did it on the Librarian, so this is very like neatly finished on the inside. Look at that. She does finishing techniques sometimes, wouldn't you know? And I put on these really nice sort of dark wooden buttons. I don't know if they're real wood, but I don't really care as long as they look like they are. That's some of my favorite button styles. It's a very plasticky sound, isn't it? I don't know, but they're pretty. Don't know where I got them, but these I'm pretty sure I got in some Norwegian yarn shop that don't have buttons. They tend to have these because they're quite, you know, traditional on colorwork cardigans, kofte as we call them. I don't know why, I always buy them in 8s, but for some reason I had 10 of this, so I don't know what to do with the other 2. But yeah, they really go with this style. Obviously I tend to hoard these buttons when I'm in Norway. I do have quite a few sets now, so I didn't buy some this time. Spoiler for acquisitions, no buttons. But there'll be other things, so we can actually get straight to that. Wow, this is a short episode, wow, my goodness. So I'm gonna mix my acquisition section with my trip summary. Most of you will probably have seen the travel vlog, which sort of tells you everything about how that trip went, although it does have a very cliffhanger ending because we just stopped recording. It's kind of difficult to record in the dark anyway. But yeah, no, we made it to, just for those of you who wondered how it ended, we made it to her dad's place, Amelia's dad's place, where we could leave the caravan there in his car workshop, and it was fine. We just thought it was good with a bit of a mysterious ending. So yeah, from the beginning we set out to go on a camping trip in Lofoten in March, April, as you do. So how did we get this idea? Well, we've always talked about that I should come and we should go to Lofoten, because I've never been, and like, I swear every time I tell someone in London that I'm from Norway, they start going on and on and on about Lofoten and the Northern Lights and I don't know what, and in the Midnight Sun, and I'm just like, I've never been, and that's like the northern half that the vast majority of Norwegians just do not live there. It's like coming to someone from the UK and start talking to them about the Highlands. It's lovely, it's great, it's just most of us do not live that life, sadly. Well, I kind of would like to sometimes, but the darkness in the winter, my goodness, I can never. So it was about time that I go, honestly. And we've looked into accommodation, renting a mobile home and things like that. It was just all so expensive. So of course Amelia comes around and says, I bought a caravan. I've always wanted one anyway. So we got one. Obviously it wasn't as impulsive as I'm making it sound, but it sounds funnier that way. And we set out. She practiced reversing the day before, so what could go wrong? It already started pretty off. Like, the actual journey itself was surprisingly smooth. It's not really been very easy to travel since the pandemic, obviously, but for once it was sort of actually not terrible. Security was smooth, it wasn't really that stressful. Yeah, but I got too excited too soon because my bag never arrived until the next day. And we never really got any clear messages about whether it would arrive or anything, and I'm just like, I got all my precious things in there. I kind of like it to arrive and know what happened. When are we getting it? I kept having to call and call until I actually got some news, which they were apparently never going to give me unless I hadn't called them. So great. But then we could just pick up the bag on our way with the caravan and everything and just set out. So I got ready in some kind of gas station because I had all my things in the suitcase, right? So I already got a taste of what this caravan life's going to be like. Just getting ready in gas stations. And the first day did go fairly smooth, and we parked up in this, it's called the Rasteplass in Norwegian, which kind of sounds like a resting place. It's kind of like a nook on the side of the road where you can park up your caravan or mobile home or car or whatever and just stay the night, whatever. They usually have toilets and a bench, maybe a nice view. It did have all those things, and then it did also have some dudes who parked up next to us at 4 AM and did not stop talking, or shouting rather, and I feel like that's unnecessary because it was a pretty big spot. They could have gone anywhere else. I was this close to just like yelling at them the next day, but I held it inside. I stayed zen, okay? Because we were also woken up at 6 AM by the electricity having completely gone out, because the fridge was broken and it just sucked up all the electricity. We couldn't get it over the gas, which we had plenty of, we thought. So that was a very annoying sound to wake up to. That was like under the mattresses that we had to dig up the entire bed at 6 AM to sort out, only to go back to bed and sleep for a couple more hours. Lovely. But then we drove off to some caravan repair place that could confirm that the fridge is indeed broken, and we were like, well, it's not like we're gonna have a hard time cooling things down given the temperature, so it was pretty much refrigerator temperature as is. So we just carried on and figured we could do without the fridge. So the rest of the day was fairly smooth. We visited a bunch of places in Lofoten, like Kabelvåg, Henningsvær and Leksvik. And we stayed in a different Rasteplass where there was a trailer that was just going on, just the engine on all the time, all night. There's always something, but a lot better than the last night. And woke up, just beautiful view, just feeling like, yay, today's our day. And it was, because here's where we're getting to the yarn. Now, there was actually yarn the day before as well in Henningsvær, because we were going to look at where Lofoten Wool have their own shop, but we actually did go to Lofoten Wool itself this day, and oh my god, the yarn. Hello. Hi. Have you missed this view? Have we missed this sort of unhinged yarn shopping that we've come to know and love on Skeindeer Knits podcast? Because she's back! She's it's happening. Okay. Sheep. Okay, we're gonna just scoot this over on the desk here. Hang on. Okay. Oh god, it's falling down. Oh god. Where do we begin? Lofoten Wool, right, is a lovely little farm in Lofoten, shortly outside of Leksvik. If you're ever there, you could just pop by, I guess, because they have a shop in the barn. We did tell Ragnhild up front that we were coming and tell her multiple times how we were running late, but anyway, we got there and oh, the yarn, just lovely yarn everywhere. I'm just looking at it. Anyway, focus. The sheep are there, so you see this. You can see all this in the vlog. I hope you've seen it already, because this is just supplementing that and explaining what we're doing there. Just looking at all the yarn, and she also let us use the shower there, which thank you. Oh my days, it was like, it was great. I'm so glad we never had to use the caravan shower, honestly, because we also struggle with the water. That's another story. So a lot of this yarn I was actually given to make designs. So we all have reasons to be excited about this. There will be some awesome designs. And when I look at this yarn, I only see Skarv knits. I'm already working on a pretty epic Skarv knit, hence why I just skipped over works in progress, because I've been working on this thing for, I think, 2 years, 3 years. And there's no reason why it's taking me long other than me accidentally knitting 3 inches too much that I had to frog, and I kind of lost a bit of mojo on that, because it's actually a really quick knit with colour work all over and it's just epic. And because it's taking me so long, I don't want to accidentally start putting it out there and like, oh sorry, it's gonna take me longer. So I'm just teasing with more imagination than the actual what it's gonna look like, but it's good. So now I'm close to finishing that and I'm really feeling that style of knitting more. I mean, this is perfect Skarv knit. It's got that natural black that is more of like a very dark brown, and it's got a very natural white that also has a bit of that tone to it. I mean, just Skarv knits. I know exactly what it's gonna be. I'm not ready to kind of pitch that yet, but we're looking at 2 sort of garments, one that's a bit small and one that's a bit big. How about that? Probably inverse colours, so one that's black on white and one that's white on black. That's all you know from me for now, but I'm feeling very inspired, I'm feeling creative. I probably just need to sit down and math the whole thing. I think both ideas are great. I'm a little bit hesitant about actually casting on these ideas until I've actually done the sleeves of the festive yokes, because they really should be done by October when I'm going to do the proper photos. Because if you guys don't know, I was going to launch them for Christmas this year, and I did, but they weren't actually finished. So I thought we'd all knit them together, hence why we're running the festive yoke haul, because I just never got around to finish the sleeves, because sleeves take a while, turns out. Now you may be wondering what this is. Well, I didn't want to just run off with yarn that I was going to be given to design. I wanted to leave some money there as well. And I saw these in this like basket there. And look at it. I mean, so let me just explain what this is. It's a 2-ply yarn, same as these. So I'm just going to read the label so you know what they all are. The colors are named differently. So this is Uttakleiv, this is Skarv, but they are sort of the same base. It's just different colors based on different fleece. 100 grams wool yarn from Happy Sheep. 2-ply, 315 meters. So yeah, this is basically the same, but one of the plies is from this, and another I believe is this, but dyed blue, naturally dyed. So it's like using whatever is natural dye. And I'm just like, when I see a big chunky skein like this, I think yarn baby and my maternal instincts kick in. I'm like, you have to come home with me. So I did buy these, but ironically when I look at them now, I just think you need to be designs as well. And I'm feeling very inspired to do something here as well. And I have some ideas, but also I'm all ears. We're obviously looking at garment. This is a sweater quantity. I'm not saying it has to be one color. There is obviously a possibility to mix and match. I have some ideas about that too. But yeah, mostly just this color. Just a hint of any of the others if I use any at all. So yeah, if there's any sort of garment that you guys are interested in, maybe you want to inspire me, or maybe I'll just run with the idea that I have, but it's also a pretty good idea. So maybe it'll be a mix of them. Who knows? This skein is already falling out, so I think I'm going to be winding this up soon, which is why I wanted to record an episode, just to show you this little plumpness of a skein before I wind it up into a cake. So that's actually all my acquisitions that I have here. Yes, because I did buy more yarn, but it didn't fit into my suitcase. Famous problem here. And this is not really very happy news, but it is happy news that I did get hold of the yarn. The reason why I got it is because Sandnes Yarn have decided to discontinue Tove. Why? I'm just gonna sit here and be really mean to Sandnes right now, because Sandnes, if you're listening, you're probably not, because if you were, you would not be doing this right now. I am livid. As livid as I can be about yarn anyway. I mean, I do like yarn, but it's also just yarn. Sandnes really just have 2 good yarns in my book. 2 Norwegian yarns. It's Peer Gynt and Tove. Peer Gynt is the yarn that I made this beautiful cardigan that just happens to be hanging here all the time because I love it. It's beautiful. It's worsted spun, so it's quite smooth. It doesn't have that fuzzy halo the way that Tove does. We have some Tove right here conveniently. Has a bit more of a halo. It's more sort of fuzzy. It's very similar to Finul. You can't really tell them apart. So yeah, I could just keep on using Finul. I mean, if you just hold these 2 strands together, you see what I mean. Very, just work together, increases the color palette as far as I'm concerned. I guess as far as Sandnes is concerned, they don't need to be making it if Rauma is making it. I beg to differ, because the greys in the Tova range are so cool and nice, and I compare them to Fionnuala in a yarn shop that had both, and it's not the same. So I've had to stock up on the greys, and I've had to stock up on this like beautiful kind of turquoise, the one that I used in the Endelos mitts. That one. I can't live without that one, so I've probably got 1 or 2 sweater quantities of that. And the ochre yellow, I mean, clearly I'm in some kind of yellow phase right now. It's probably just the sun coming out, which normally I get very cranky about because I am a vampire in my heart of hearts. But Sunnis, what are you doing? Because here's the thing, this is the reason I'm mad. And I've been around enough in this knitting community to see this happening consistently, and I've talked to various yarn shop owners and people who work in yarn shops about this, because that's what I do when I go to Norway. And they all agree and have the same experience as me, and they should know because they work in yarn shops, that when people get into knitting, they first go all over the superwash merino and the soft yarns. They're like, wow, soft yarn, oh I don't like that itchy yarn, oh soft yarn, merino, and everyone, well not everyone, like the vast majority, gradually go over to the woolly wools. That is the trajectory that we most often see. Not always, but most often. People start off with the softer, smooth yarns, and they get a little bit disappointed by alpaca that keeps sagging, and merino that keeps growing, and nups, and pills, and then they find the woolly wools that give the perfect results when it comes to stranded colour work, and holds up beautifully. I mean, look at this. Look how it's held up. Granted, this is worse than spun, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. It seems so incredibly tone deaf and just completely off the kind of fashion radar that Sunda's yarn is supposed to be on to discontinue a yarn that is the future in most knitters' knitting horizon. Why would you do this? I just don't get it. I'm also mad because it is one of my favourite yarns, and discontinuing one of my favourite yarns. I've already been through this. It was rough when PT2 was removed. They said it merged with Fionnuala, but that's not true. PT2 is gone as far as I'm concerned. And now they're doing it to Tova too. And what's next? Are they going to take Usk from me? I mean, oh god, don't even. So Sunnis, please reconsider. Please, maybe you're just planning a cheeky relaunch. I will also mention, because if I don't, someone else is going to, which is usually the retort that I get when I am frustrated about this decision of theirs, is that, but they are going to be bringing out a new yarn, which is a finer Peer Gynt. And they are, and that is exciting. So this is, again, their worsted spun Norwegian wool. Most of Sandnes yarn is not Norwegian wool, contrary to popular belief. It is just Tova and Peer Gynt. And then discontinuing Tova and bringing back a thinner Peer Gynt, which I'm going to guess probably will have the meterage of Tova. So that's nice. But it's not the same. It's going to be great. I'm going to love that yarn, I'm sure. But it's not the same. It does not replace Tova. And I really do hope and think, well, I don't think, I hope and wish that they're going to bring back Tova as is, but just put a different label on and make it seem all snazzy and new, even though it doesn't need to change. Tova doesn't need to change. And it's just absurd, because like they have so many patterns going decades and decades back that uses Tova in their colour work cardigans. Like I've got this old book here. 42 Norwegian cardigans. This is a Sunnis book. They're gonna say in the yarn shops now, oh, you should use this yarn instead. You should use the fine Peer Gynt. You could use that instead. No, you can't, because you can't steek that yarn without sewing the way you can with this woolly wool type yarn. This yarn specifically. So yeah, disappointed, Sunnis, but you can make it right. You can improve. I'm disappointed now, but you can make it right. But yeah, so. You probably gathered as much that I bought a lot of Tova when I was home, and I kind of wish I'd bought more because there was quite a lot on the shelf still. If anyone just wants to be charitable and just send Tova whenever they find it to the Skeindeer Knits, that's totally unnecessary, but also kind of want it all. Just, I can't justify buying all the grey yarn I could find, but I really did want to, but I think I only got one grey sweater quantity. I got a lot of the ochre and I got a lot of the turquoise, some navy blue and red and white, because I thought maybe I'll do a Marius for my nephew when he's a little bit older so he can wear it for a number of years, and that's bound to happen, right? We are already training him to wear all the woolly wools from a young age, which, oh, don't even get me started on this. Am I gonna go on this rant? there's like weird, like, I mean, I've talked about this since I started this podcast in 2016, and like, it's just this weird misconception that kids can't wear woolly wools, that somehow they're too sensitive to wear it, that children and babies, they can't wear it. And it's like, that's ridiculous, because how do you think we survived in Norway since the Stone Age? However long we've been wearing sheep wool and crafting with it, and eventually being introduced to knitting, however many, a couple of hundred years ago that was. I think we've always had children wear wool next to skin, and it wasn't this carefully selected, you know, woolly wools that we have today. Like, this is a particular, you know, what do we say, like, selection from the fleece to make sure that it is a lot softer than it was back when. So the woolly wools that we complain is scratchy today really isn't compared to what it was when it was worn by everyone next to skin, because that's how you stay warm. You've got wool next to skin. You can't have it as an outer layer. We can have that too, preferably outer layer if you want to be really warm. So it's just a really weird thing to me, because it's just, and it's still done. People still have their babies wear wool, and apart from the very few exceptions who can't wear it, which is a very, very tiny number, it's good to just start early. And if you just happen to have a kid who later on says it's too scratchy and they don't want to wear it anymore, okay, well, you tried. You can't be, you know, an idealist about it. You gotta just be pragmatic. Like, I have a friend who had a baby who made so many knits for the baby, but the baby has eczema, so it just doesn't work. You know, that will happen too. But just in general terms, right? Babies can wear wool, probably should. Just, it's good. So we're training my nephew early. He doesn't mind at all. He loves wearing it. Keeps him warm. Oh, I almost thought we were done talking about the yarn I bought, but we're not, actually. Now that I'm done yelling at Sandnes, I'm gonna yell at my favorite mill, Hillesvåg. We're gonna roast Hillesvåg now. Yeah, we're doing it. I love Hillesvåg yarn. I love the mill. It's just awesome. It's like a half museum, half working mill. It's great. But can you, when you have new lovely yarn, can you promote it so people hear about it? Does that have to be mine and other podcasters and Instagrammers' job now? Because it's not. I'd love to talk about it, and I'm very excited to talk about it. But why did it take me so long? And why it's so hard to hear about it? Because they just do not promote their new yarn, and just like sneaking in there and put it on a shelf. It's like you would discover it by accident. It's like, there's a new yarn by Hillesvåg. What? This is not the first time. They did the same thing with Vidde and Varde. It was pretty difficult to hear of Sol and Vilje when they got new colorways. Like, Hillesvåg, toot your own horn. Don't be afraid of showing off, bragging about your new yarn. Let the world know. Promote without abandon. Please and thank you. Because I guess I have to do it. Because they came out with the third yarn in the Vidde and Varde range. Could have started with a V as well, but no, they decided to call it Luna so that you just wouldn't know. So, to recap, my Librarian cardigan that we already looked at was made in Vidde. That was the blend of pelt wool and lamb's wool. There was also Varde, which is 100% pelt wool. But then we have Luna, that is 100% lamb's wool. So now we have the three yarns that are all the same weight, the sort of Aran worsted, and they have 200 meters per 100 grams. So it's very lofty and light, so you can make an Aran weight garment with a meterage that would probably make you think more of worsted weight yarn. So, like, the Librarian cardigan is designed for Aran weight, but it's very, very light. You would not think it was an Aran weight jumper, which is a win-win as far as I'm concerned, because then you can just have something that's a quick knit that doesn't weigh much. Because a lot of the times when you make a garment in heavier weight wool, it just feels heavier and denser and warmer. And this one isn't any of that. So I do love this yarn, the Vidde, the Varde, and now Luna. So Luna is dyed on just pure white lamb's wool, as opposed to the other ones that are either the grey pelt wool or a grey white blend. And that affects the colours that you can get. So now they have a fuller colour range, and they can make this bright yellow, which again seems to be the mood of the day. And so what am I going to do with three skeins? I think it'll be another shawl. So the new shawl pattern of mine that is going to come out, just not quite yet, is it's worsted weight, I'd argue. I used Susan Crawford's barn yarn. I used 3 skeins, just under 3 skeins. So this would be enough for that. But I'm probably not going to make the same shawl design twice. There might be something else down the line. I'm not really in a rush to design with this. I just found 3 skeins and I knew I wanted them to come home with me. A little bit of a collector's mentality there probably, but I do want to get a quantity that I can actually make something out of. I'm not much of a buying single skeins kind of person. I really never was, because then you're just left with a bunch of single skeins and you do not know what to make with it. I always like to buy a quantity that's actually going to be usable. I'm not a huge accessory knitter, although I am that too, clearly. But mostly garments and mostly things that require more than 1 skein. So while it may not seem fun to buy a bunch of skeins that all are the same, that's usually when you can make gorgeous, gorgeous things. And that's something in knitting I learned pretty early on. You know, the first time I wanted to buy yarn, I wanted to get one of each colour in the yarn I was going to buy, and then eventually just like, that's going to be very difficult to use. So that yarn was purchased at the yarn shop in Leksvik called Gretes something. They also had a Husfrid in there, so they actually had 2 yarn shops plus Lofoten wool outside of Leksvik. So that was pretty good for a town way out in Lofoten, I would say. It would cover all my needs, so part of me just honestly just want to get a license to drive like a massive truck and just get a massive caravan and live in it. But I also like living in London, so there's that. But yeah, continuing on with how the trip went, after that day we decided to drive out to the tip of Lofoten, which was, you know, where we're going to see all the amazing sights, and it was so clouded we really didn't see anything at all. It was getting quite snowy and windy, and at the end of it we were going to park up next to this camping place, and we'd been told that they had been ploughing the snow, so we should be able to park up next to the electricity so we could charge up the solar panels so that we wouldn't run out every morning and every night. We could not do that because they barely ploughed the snow at all, so we couldn't reverse into the electricity sockets. It was just a mess, and it was so windy up there, right up against the ocean. So if we'd been standing there, we may have ended up at the sea during the night. It was just, you could feel the caravan shake, you know. So we're like, yeah, we're not staying here. This is very unpleasant and scary. So we drove further down Lofoten until we found a bus stop in Å, where we could just sort of be protected from the wind a little bit, but it was shaking a lot. It was just like, oh, every time there was like a big wind coming. But we decided we were going to sleep there, maybe not sleep super well, but sleep nonetheless. And as soon as we're starting to get ready for bed, we hear this other sound that suggests we're out of gas. Because the gas tank had not been filled up. We've been promised a full tank of propane and it was not full. So we ran out in the middle of the night and we could just feel the temperature lower by every second, and basically had to make a choice of whether to risk dying driving in the storm at night or freezing to death. So we're like, oh, it's probably gonna be fine driving. For a minute there we were like trapped in this like wind snow thing that we couldn't see anything, and we were like slowly going into the other lane because we're trying to slow down because it was just we couldn't see anything. So that was a couple of scary seconds, but most of the drive was actually fine. And we got to the hotel, we took in there and we checked in there and got a bit of a reset before we got back on the road and found a much nicer camping place not too far away from Lofoten wool, in fact, that helped us reverse park and got us electricity and a long cord that we could plug in with, and we could make waffles inside the caravan, and that was so nice. Yeah, we had the final day was like finally we could relax and just sit and knit and enjoy ourselves finally. We really didn't want to take any chances, so we did actually return to Amelia's place and just hung out there for the rest of the time. I have clearly inhaled some wool, so I think that might be a sign that I should wrap things up. I think I managed to beef up this episode as much as they normally are. I've gotta get going, have a little nice stroll in Hampstead Heath today with some friends, so I will see you guys next time. Bye. And thanks for watching, and sign up to the newsletter. Bye.